Most people believe attraction fades because something goes wrong. An argument, a mistake, a betrayal, but attraction almost never disappears in loud moments. It disappears quietly when nothing seems broken at all. It fades when your presence stops feeling optional, when your availability feels unlimited, when the other person senses, without ever saying it directly, that you will remain no matter what they do. Human psychology does not respond to words, it responds to patterns. And one of the strongest patterns the mind reacts to is emotional self-containment. When someone feels that your life does not revolve around them, their nervous system responds, not consciously, not logically, instinctively. They become more alert. They begin paying closer attention. Something subtle shifts inside them. This is not about being distant. It is about not being dependent. There is a quiet but powerful difference between choosing someone and needing someone. Choice feels light. Need feels heavy. When you need someone, it leaks into everything. Your tone changes. Your reactions feel urgent. Your silence carries anxiety instead of calm. Your emotional stability begins to depend on reassurance. Your confidence begins to depend on response. And without realizing it, you send a signal the human mind finds deeply unattractive, that losing them would collapse you. Ironically, this is the moment attraction begins to weaken. The mind does not protect what feels guaranteed. It protects what feels valuable. Value is not created by effort. It is created by emotional regulation. When someone sees that you can be okay without them, they experience something uncomfortable but powerful. Your absence becomes imaginable, and that possibility changes everything. Not because you threaten to leave, not because you manipulate, but because you no longer communicate that you cannot stand on your own. This shift does not come from words. It comes from consistency, from how you move through your life, from how you respond instead of react, from how your emotional state remains stable, whether they lean closer or pull away. Most people misunderstand fear in relationships. Fear, in this context, is not panic. It is awareness. Awareness that your presence is a choice. Awareness that your attention is not owned. Awareness that losing you would create a silence they did not expect. This awareness does not come from games. It comes from self-respect. When your life is full, when your identity is intact, when your emotional center is internal, people feel it. They feel that you are grounded, that you are not waiting, that you are not chasing, and the human mind reacts to this with curiosity mixed with caution. They start noticing details they once ignored. They become more attentive without knowing why. They feel a subtle urgency they cannot explain, not because you demanded importance, but because you embodied it. The moment you stop trying to secure attachment, you begin to create it. Because now, your emotional state is no longer predictable. Your presence is steady, but not guaranteed. And unpredictability, when paired with emotional stability, creates attraction at a psychological level. Not chaos, not coldness, not distance, but grounded independence. This is where many people make a mistake. They confuse emotional independence with withdrawal, with silence meant to provoke, with cold behavior designed to create reaction. That is not independence. That is insecurity disguised as strength. True emotional independence is calm. It is measured. It does not need reaction to feel validated. You remain present, but you are not entangled. You listen, but you are not consumed. You care, but your identity does not disappear inside the relationship. And when someone feels this, their behavior changes without you ever asking. They become more careful with their words, more conscious of their actions, more aware of your value. Not because you forced it, but because something shifted inside them. They begin to sense that losing you would not create drama, but absence. And absence, when it comes from someone emotionally whole, is far more powerful than conflict. This is the foundation of quiet attachment. And once this foundation is in place, words stop being necessary. Once emotional independence is established, the dynamic inside the relationship begins to shift in ways most people do not consciously notice. This shift is not dramatic. There is no confrontation, no announcement, no sudden change in behavior. It happens internally first. The other person begins to feel less certain about their position, not insecure in a panicked way, but aware in a quiet, unsettling way. They sense that your attention is no longer automatic, that your emotional energy is not always available on demand, that your reactions are measured rather than reactive. And this subtle change creates psychological friction. Human beings are highly sensitive to patterns. When a familiar pattern breaks, the mind becomes alert. When your availability was predictable, your presence felt safe but unremarkable. When it becomes intentional, your presence starts to feel valuable. This is where most people misunderstand attraction. They think attraction is created by doing more, by giving more, by explaining more, by reassuring more. In reality, attraction often deepens when reassurance is no longer required. When someone no longer needs constant validation, their confidence becomes visible. And confidence that does not ask to be noticed is far more compelling than confidence that demands attention. At this stage, the other person begins to adjust. They may reach out more, ask questions they never asked before, pay attention to details they once ignored. Not because they suddenly decided to care, but because the emotional balance has shifted. The mind instinctively monitors what feels less secure. This is not manipulation. This is perception. When someone senses that they cannot predict your emotional state, they begin to value your presence more carefully. They start to think before speaking. They hesitate before withdrawing. They become more aware of consequences. Not consequences you threaten, but consequences that exist naturally when two independent individuals choose each other. This is where respect quietly returns. Respect does not come from dominance. It comes from boundaries. Boundaries that are not announced, but lived. When your time is structured, when your attention is intentional, when your emotional energy is protected, others feel it. They feel that access to you is not guaranteed. That connection must be maintained. That effort matters again. This realization creates a subtle tension. Not anxiety, not fear, but awareness. Awareness that the relationship is no longer one-sided. Awareness that emotional investment must be mutual. Awareness that neglect now carries weight. Most people never reach this stage because they mistake availability for love. They believe that constant presence equals commitment, that unlimited access equals loyalty, that emotional sacrifice equals depth. But the human mind does not work this way. The mind values what has structure, what has limits, what requires intention. When love becomes structureless, it becomes invisible. When connection has no boundaries, it becomes background noise. This is why emotional independence feels powerful, not because it creates distance, but because it restores contrast. Your presence becomes something that can be missed. Your attention becomes something that can be lost. Your absence becomes meaningful, and meaning is what creates attachment. At this stage, the other person may experience moments of discomfort. They may feel slightly unsettled when you do not respond immediately. They may notice silence where there used to be reassurance. They may feel unsure where they once felt certain. This discomfort is not harmful. It is informative. It forces awareness. Awareness of their own emotional dependence. Awareness of how much they relied on your stability. Awareness of what your presence actually provided. And once awareness exists, behavior begins to change. They may become more present, more communicative, more attentive, not because you asked for it, but because they now feel responsible for maintaining the connection. This is the moment where power dynamics equalize, not because one person gains power, but because imbalance disappears. Two emotionally regulated individuals create a different kind of relationship, one built on choice rather than need, on respect rather than reassurance, on mutual investment rather than assumption. This is also where many people sabotage the process. They feel the shift, they sense the other person leaning in, and they panic. They rush to explain, they rush to reassure, they rush to return to the old pattern. They mistake attention for security, but security does not come from restoring predictability. It comes from maintaining self-respect. When you hold your emotional center steady, when you do not overcorrect, when you allow the other person to adjust on their own, the shift solidifies. Because now, your emotional independence is no longer temporary. It becomes who you are. And when emotional independence becomes identity, attachment forms naturally. Not through force, not through fear, but through recognition. Recognition that your presence is chosen. Recognition that your absence would be felt. Recognition that the relationship exists because both people actively participate. This is the psychology behind quiet influence. Nothing is said, nothing is demanded, nothing is threatened, yet everything changes. There is one final misunderstanding that keeps people trapped in unhealthy emotional patterns. They believe that influence comes from effort, from explaining, from convincing, from proving value. But real influence comes from alignment. When your actions match your inner stability, people respond without needing instruction. This is why emotional independence feels powerful, not because it creates fear, but because it removes expectation. Expectation is heavy. It creates pressure. It turns connection into obligation. When expectation disappears, choice becomes visible, and choice is where genuine attachment lives. At this stage, words are no longer required. Your behavior speaks clearly. Your boundaries communicate without announcement. Your consistency replaces reassurance. You are not distant. You are present with intention. You are not cold. You are calm, and calm carries authority. When someone feels this, they stop testing. They stop pushing limits. They stop assuming access. They begin respecting space, because space is no longer empty. It is filled with self-respect. This is why the most profound shifts in relationships happen without conversation. No speeches, no ultimatums, no emotional explanations, just a quiet recalibration. Two people either rise to meet each other or they drift apart naturally, and either outcome becomes acceptable because your sense of worth is no longer tied to their response. This is where peace replaces anxiety, not because you secured attachment, but because you stopped fearing loss. And paradoxically, this is the moment attachment becomes strongest, because what is no longer chased is often what is most carefully held. Before this video ends, ask yourself one honest question. Are you trying to be chosen, or are you living in a way that makes choice inevitable? If this perspective challenged how you see relationships, consider staying connected here. New stories and psychological breakdowns are shared regularly, not to tell you what to think, but to help you see clearly.